Episode 11. How we doing? Cup of Mets. I'm Rob Venegas. Right next to me is Ian Bosniak. Ian, how we doing?
That was good, man. That was
Appreciate
good.
it. Appreciate it.
Taking an unorthodox approach to this episode 11, having so many technical difficulties.
A lot.
I'm glad I am not a full-time producer or anything along those lines. But yes, as Rob mentioned, the Cup of Mets podcast, not overly enthusiastic either over here. Before we get going, give us a follow on Instagram, on Twitter, and on YouTube. We are at Cup of Mets. Also, be sure to rate and subscribe to the one that you're listening to, right? Whether it be on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. So, Rob, things are not looking good.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, for lack of a better word, promising. The Mets had high hopes here in 2023, spending the most money in Major League Baseball, and to come out with a 34-40 record, 7 games behind the last wild card spot, and games behind the Atlanta Braves. It's unacceptable, Ian, to be honest with you, and it's really discouraging. There's no life. I can't really watch a full game of baseball anymore, to be completely honest with you. But again, we're gonna stick with them thick and thin, through and through. Just hopefully by July, August, it gets a little better.
We were talking before about potentially going to the game on Sunday.
In Philly.
In Philadelphia. Would you be okay if I brought a fired Billy Eppler sign with me?
Honestly, if it gets the boys going, I'll be okay with anything. And at this rate, nobody to him, Billy Eppler. He didn't really make any eye popping moves. I mean, Carlos Correa was one of them, but obviously with all medics and ankles and this and that, it didn't really work out. But pretty much the same team from 2022. Obviously, no Edwin Diaz and a couple new faces in the bullpen. But just like I said in the beginning, just truly unacceptable.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I feel like a fire Billy Eppler sign would be better at Citi Field. I don't know why I would bring it into Citizens Bank Ballpark. A lot of people would probably look at me. And if you're just like kind of a fan of like the Phillies and you don't pay attention to other baseball, people would probably look at me like I had 10 heads. They'd be like, who the hell is Eppler? With that being said, yeah, I want to title this podcast the Billy Eppler episode. Listen, the players have underperformed. Don't get me wrong. There have been injuries. Buck Showalter has made some very interesting management maneuvers. With all that being said, Billy Eppler did not construct the depth that was needed to, comprise a team that was supposed to be all in, that has the highest payroll in baseball, depth, both pitching and offensively. And then when you kind of look at how the offseason went on, you realize that they missed out on a lot of key arms or key bats that they talked about, but the Mets went in another direction. And if money wasn't an object, not signing those, there's really no excuse. And we're seeing it all come into fruition now. As you mentioned, 34-40, now 7 games behind even a wild card spot. The Braves and the Marlins are playing off their asses. The Braves are 48-26. The Mets are 14 games back. Like, who expected this on June? What is this?
22nd.
June 22nd.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, you pretty much hit every nail on the head there, just explaining what he failed to do. And again, Braves, without a doubt, are a great team with or without Danson, and again, they've had their key injuries in their rotation, but they're a scrappy team, and they've always held their own throughout the last couple of years.
Yeah, and Orlando Arcia all of a sudden's a fucking stud.
Yeah, and I want to apologize because Ozzy Alvis wasn't on my top 10 for second basemen, and he is probably, if not the best second baseman, or if not one of them, arguably so. But again, the Mets, and it's interesting because again, you name teams like the Marlins and even the Phillies. The Phillies and the Marlins both have worse run differentials than the Mets do, and that just says a lot in terms of record wise where we're at and how we've performed in general.
Wow. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I didn't realize that. Okay, yeah. So the Marlins have a minus 18 run differential, yet they're 9 games above 500. And again, this is as of 9 p.m. on June 22nd, and we're not really paying attention to what's going on around the league right now because the Mets are off, but we're not obviously. So again, Marlins minus 18 run differential, the Phillies minus 19 run differential, and the Mets, at the lowly 34 and 40, a minus 15 run differential. So quite strange. Definitely quite strange. And I mean, at this point, with all these teams, how many teams are in front of the Mets right now when it comes to the wild card?
Seven. I want to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, seven.
Oh,
Or
and the
to the
Marlins.
first wild card, but like the third, again,
All right,
the third one, it's at least,
five.
yeah, five exactly.
So the Mets have to hop 5 teams in order to even reach that third wild card berth currently. And again, it's June 22nd, but the Mets didn't lose their 40th game last year until sometime in August. So it kind of goes to show where they're at in a way. And then 8 teams in total. You really have to hope and pray that some of these other teams fall apart. And the only way that I really see, I don't know if you feel differently, Rob, but to me, this kind of reminds me of 2016. The Mets were not below 500 for long, I believe. With that said, they were hovering around for most of the year. And then towards the end of the year, I mean, there were so many injuries, but then the guys like Lugo and Gazelman stepped up and, some pieces were brought in and they were able to make a run at the wild card game. Um, but the way that they were able to do that was a lot of the teams in front of them kind of crumbled. You have to hope that some of these teams, 8 teams. And then you got to look at even, the Reds who are, in first place somehow in the Central, but they're only 5 games over 500. So you have to figure that they're going to be in the mix at some point as well. And it really is something that you have to kind of ponder if they really are a team, if it's kind of realistic right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, looking at the schedule here, we do have a couple teams on the schedule coming up the next couple series that we can make some noise and we can kind of gain some ground here in the wild card standings. I mean, the Mets have the Phillies this weekend. They got a 4-game set with the Brewers, and then after the Brewers, they got a 3-game set with San Francisco. So again, all three teams are ahead of us in the wild card standings. This is kind of like our make or break point right here in terms of if we're going to be buyers or sellers come August 1st.
And that's my bread and butter. You know that, Rob.
Yes, yes, sir, definitely.
I'm a wheeling and dealing type person. The early 2010s, late 2000s, even the mid 2000s. Well, no, not even the mid 2000s, late 2000s into the 2010s, where like I would have trade ideas left, and yeah. But I really hope that doesn't occur. Being sellers was not on anybody's agenda.
No, definitely not. And again, like I said in the beginning of the episode, 2023 was, a lot of high expectations to, coming into spring training. And, the first almost 75 games were 6, 7 games below 500. It's kind of wild. But it's funny you bring up like the trade scenarios, like when we were younger. One trade or trade scenario that you would always bring up was when Jose Reyes was a pending free agent the year after his last year with the Mets. He won the batting title. As you remember, he dropped that bunt. Terry Collins took him out, and he said his goodbyes after that. But I always remember, like I said, that trade proposal. You said I would offer Jose Reyes to the Red Sox for Jackie Bradley Jr., Xander Bogaerts, and a pitcher to be named later. Stuff like that. And that's
And
one. And
and
that's
that
one
was
that
and that was
always
a
in my head.
Yeah, and that was a year before he hit free agency
Yes. Yes.
because you just kind of knew that the writing was on the wall that David Wright was the guy at the time,
Mm-hmm.
opposed to Jose Reyes, who would get that long-term deal. And obviously the Marlins paid out the kazoo for him then. So
That Carl Crawford money.
oh gee, dude, that was a wild Marlins little. And they went out and got who else? They got Mark Burley. They got they almost signed Pujols.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember that they were in the running for Albert Pujols, and thank God he chose
Who else did the
the
Marlins bring
Angels.
in?
I mean, you're talking a while ago, but I know they picked up Mark Burley. I know they picked up Reyes.
Reyes, Mark
Uh,
Burley.
I mean, you would have to really look that up, honestly, because that's a while ago from my memory. I just remember they went on a spending spree as well.
Wow. I
And that's
normally
with like an up and coming Christian Yelich, an up and coming Giancarlo Stanton, and a Marcelo Ozuna. Like, imagine having that outfield now.
Ozuna from the Braves. Yeah. No, absolutely. But yeah, hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully they're not selling. Rob, I want to ask you, what kind of direction do we want to take this episode? Because we could discuss the ins and outs of the series that just unfolded, against the Astros, and then prior against the Cardinals and the Yankees. But um, I I just feel like there's kind of a few things that I want to unpack about Billy Eppler first. If you
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, so first and foremost, as you mentioned earlier, the offense did not improve at all. And there were stretches not only throughout the year last year, and the Mets got superb starting pitching all year long. Okay. So there were stretches throughout last year, and it was mainly exposed in September that there were holes in the offense. Okay. Going into this year, obviously the Mets had a few areas that they could upgrade offensively. DH, potentially third base, and then maybe an outfield spot in left field. Okay. Yes, Brett Beatty was on his way, but essentially they needed another middle of the order bat. Okay. And Brett Beatty has dabbled in left field for say, even though they see him as a long-term third baseman. The Mets could have made him some sort of move for a third baseman, or for another. And granted, I know that the Correa thing fell apart, but that was towards the end of the winter, right? They didn't entertain the idea of Trey Turner. I mean, Turner hasn't looked good thus far this season, but they didn't entertain a lot of these guys in the beginning of the offseason. And I know a lot of that was focused on them trying to figure out the Jacob deGrom, Justin Verlander situation and how they would build out the pitching. But as a team, and granted, they're hitting right now, but as a team that struggled offensively and has been inconsistent as anything this year, their two offensive additions were Omar Narvaez and Tommy Pham. Granted, Pham's been good. And then if you want to throw Tim LeCastro in there, go ahead, go crazy.
Now, listen, I mean, again, not really, three big names, sexy names in those three that you just named, but a guy like Omar Narvaez was, I guess, necessary in a sense where you're comparing him to James McCann, but in a sense where you're trying to compare him to like a Salvador Perez or like or a hard hitting catcher like I guess like a Francisco Alvarez in a way. It didn't really make sense, And again, Billy Epler, um, I feel like his main focus at the deadline was, or at the in free agency was starting pitching and was Jacob deGrom for one. And obviously it didn't work out, but then he allocated $40 million to a Justin Verlander who's been not good but good sometimes, and then it gives us less options elsewhere when you give $40 million to a 40-year-old. So I see where you're coming from in terms of just those three names. But a name that you mentioned in the real JD Martinez, that would have been it, especially at the DH spot. But
I just want you to think about this for a moment. Justin Verlander is making $43 million. And again, Justin Verlander has looked like vintage Verlander at times this year, as Rob mentioned. So don't get me wrong, right? Through 9 starts thus far, he's thrown 52 innings. He's put up a 433 FIP, and he's been worth 0.6 WAR. Again, that's just 9 starts. And he won the American League Cy Young Award last year, but he's 40 years old. Okay. And I know that he wants to be the next Nolan Ryan and throw till he's 45. And that's why the Mets shelled out $43 million. But what Billy Eppler essentially tried to do is he tried to replicate 2022. And last year in season 1, I even said to you at a time, I believe it was when Jacob deGrom was returning, it's like not many teams are ever afforded that opportunity to have 2 studs at the top of their rotation. Normally, the winners have a deep rotation 1 through 5, whether it be an ace, to B aces, or whatever you want to call them, right? But think about that. Within $43 million, the Mets, I kind of laugh because the Mets could have re-signed Chris Bassett to the $20 million. And the thing is with Bassett is Bassett's a workhouse. Holy shit. It's been a long day. Bassett is a work dog. He's gonna post 175 plus innings and make at least 27 plus starts a year. And you know what you're gonna get from him. And then you brought up a Martinez. What did JD Martinez get in free agency? He got what?
1 year, $10 million.
He got $10 million. So that would have put us at $30 million. Justin Turner, who's got a
2 year, $21.7 million contract.
And the second was an option.
Yeah.
And Turner currently has 130 some odd or 140 some odd weighted runs created plus thus far. And it just, to me, goes to show that you could have plugged a lot of other holes that were necessary once they lost Jacob deGrom, and instead Billy Eppler decided to allocate that money to Justin Verlander. Again, hindsight's 2020, but I posted, I mean, we spoke about it in the hot stove. I wanted two pieces. I wanted Carlos Rodon. I'm happy that didn't happen, but I mean, it's frustrating to see this all play out because the fact that Verlander hasn't looked good as well is adding injury to insult.
No, I mean, definitely, again, Justin Turner would have been nice, a nice little reunion, but because he could play third, he could play first, he could DH when he need be. And then, even a guy like JD Martinez, he hits lefties well. I know that for a fact. And, another name you mentioned in the reel was Michael Conforto. That would have been a nice little reunion as well, as, it took him a little bit to kind of get going, but, now the Giants are in a playoff position in the second wild card. And thanks to him, he's been a big part of their lineup now. But, again, he hasn't looked great. JV definitely has been given innings his last start against the Astros. He was 7 innings, 4 runs, 8 hits, but the strikeout numbers aren't there. Again, you could see that pitching all those innings last year with the Cy Young and the playoffs and the World Series is coming to a little bit of a toll, and then obviously starting the year on the IL.
Do you have his StatCast wise, what's plaguing him the most right now? I don't have it up in front of me right.
You're talking about Justin Verlander?
Yeah.
What's plaguing him the most? I mean, he's in the 12th percentile in average exit velocity. Hard hit percentage, he's 19th percentile, 31 percentile in K percentage. And then, his whiff percentage is 27%, whereas a guy like Max Scherzer, his whiff percentage is in the 73rd percentile, so.
Yeah, and Scherzer's getting the heat from fans.
Yeah, but again, 52 innings, 44 strikeouts. His whip is at 1.21. Not Justin Verlander numbers.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, again, as you said, he has been giving us a little bit more length as of recent. But with that being said, it's like he has 2 good starts and then he implodes for 2. And then he's good, and then he's bad, and then he's good for 2, and then he's bad for 2. And you can't survive a season like that, especially when your other ace and Max Scherzer has had some similar difficulties as well. And to me, though, when you're looking at Scherzer and Verlander, and again, my rant on Billy Eppler is over. I just think that he approached. Oh yeah, the last part on Billy Eppler was the bullpen. He said that he wanted all the optional pieces opposed to adding guys like an Andrew Chafin or any of the remaining free agents on the market. Well, Adam Ottavino has sucked. David Robertson has been the only real bright spot. Brooks Raley has looked better as of recent. Jeff Brigham has been a bright spot, but it's plaguing them because they don't have the depth now. And especially with the injuries to this, rotation, which, there's another one. Here we go. Jose Quintana. He hasn't been good since 2018. I know he had a great year last season and he had a track record beyond 2018, but it's not like he's slinging 95 miles per hour as a southpaw. it's all off speed and it's 91, 92. He's in rehab assignments right now. He's gonna return after the All-Star break, right? But that's what they pay $13 million a year to replace a guy that was guaranteed to give you 30 starts a year in a Bassett or a Taiwan Walker.
Yeah, I think you compare him more to like a guy like Taiwan Walker, lower end rotational guy, 4 or 5 starter at best. But again, Taiwan Walker, as bad as he's been this year, he's picked it up and he's on the field. So you bring up some great points there in Quintana. And Quintana had plans to pitch for Colombia, I believe, as well. So which is there we go. I don't want to get into the WBC debate, but again, and then I don't know if we didn't mention it beforehand, but they just made the move to opt Tyler McGill to AAA. So there's another bust that hasn't really had the season that we've wanted him to have.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Tyler McGill was viewed as, a 6, 7 man type starter, depth, right? Starting the season out in Syracuse. But to me, I felt like, obviously the injuries made him, right front and center into the rotation. But I feel like Tyler McGill the Mets should have tried to develop him into that Trevor Williams, because the Mets are missing Trevor Williams right now. That long man, especially since the rotation hasn't given them the length, right? You mentioned that they opt Tyler McGill, and the only reason why they option Tyler McGill, aside from the fact that he's pitching like shit, is that they bring up Vinny Natali, who pitched for Team Italy in the World Baseball Classic, and they signed a couple weeks back, but they bring him up just to have another arm for another several days until McGill's spot in the rotation is up. And then I don't know. Do you think is it Joey Lucchesi that gets recalled?
Yeah, I mean, he won AAA Pitcher of the Month, I believe, or week or something like that. But again, I think you give the lefty another shot. He has the most major league experience in terms of our farm system, aside from David Peterson. But Peterson's been having his own issues. Again, he Lucchesi has shown signs, so I'd be willing to give him another shot, definitely.
Yeah, no, I think Joey Lucchesi is really the only way to go.
It's the smart move. It is because again, more major league experience than anyone in our farm system. Again, I just wish they give these young guys in the bullpen, whether it's AAA, AA, so be it. If they throw strikes, if they get guys out, just call them up, because I'm tired of seeing guys like Dominic Leone in big spots. I know the last couple 9 appearances, 9 games, whatever it was, he was pitching well, but yesterday kind of just threw me over the ledge. You hit it right on the head. Adam Ottavino has been a big disappointment. Granted, his ERA has been lowered to 3s, but it doesn't matter. We signed you to have another 2022 type year, and you come out and kind of just show why you've been jumped around the whole time, whether it's in the Bronx or Boston or that tenure in Colorado.
It's so funny because this episode's hopping all over the place, and I knew it beforehand. I told you that it was going to be mayhem.
The podcast gods didn't want us to record today, but we made it happen. So it's going to be how
with the technical difficulties, also with the fact that we're just frustrated, and this team is just not where you want it to be. But Ottavino, right? He's been getting hit so hard on his slider. I don't have exact numbers in front of me in terms of batting average against when it comes to the slider. But the interesting part is, and again, now I'm going over to the starting pitching, Justin Verlander, he's getting hit hard on his curveball, and he's getting hit hard on his slider, which those are two when he's off, and those are two pitches that are his bread and butter. And then for Max Scherzer, in the games that he's been off, it's the slider. So it's these pitches that define not that define the player, because they have an arsenal, but it's that out pitch. And when you don't have that out pitch, whether it be a reliever or a starter, especially these guys, doesn't matter if you're a Hall of Famer or just a good reliever for your entire career like Ottavino, you're not going to be able to get hitters out.
Well, yeah, and the fact that you say that's their out pitch, it's slider and curveballs. When they miss and they hang, it's easier to hit. And these guys are not only missing where spots where they could get hit out the ballpark. Ottavino slider, you could tell it's just loopy, has no movement, and hits the barrel of the bat every time in terms of lefty righty. Max Scherzer again just misses right down the middle when he misses, and then even Verlander, he hangs that curveball and it just goes to the parking lot. So again, it's where they miss too as well, Boz. Because again, like when you miss, you want to miss down, you want to miss high. If anything, you want to miss outside.
Absolutely.
But when you miss, when we're missing, especially with a guy like Senga, when he misses, it's unfortunately right where a hitter can drive it, and that's just where we're at in this season.
Senga. And he's been the fucking ace.
Yeah, man. I mean, I would love for him to cut the walks down. Again, the fact that he's been our ace, and we were looking forward to guys like JV and Max, and even the guy like Cookie, man. Cookie's been a big disappointment.
Oh, Carrasco is. I gotta be honest. I mean, Carrasco's another one whose spot should be kind of in peril. I mean, his last 7 starts, 5.09 ERA, 35 and a third of an innings pitched, 23 strikeouts. And his last 3 starts, he's gone 3 innings, 4 2/3, and then 5 innings respectively, giving up 5, 2, and 4 earned runs respectively. And again, the walks are there as well. Cookie has not looked good. So, if they're bringing in Quintana comes back, he'll replace
McGill, or like a reliever that just got called up if McGill doesn't make it back to the show.
What I think that they should do is when everybody's healthy, they should make it a 6-man rotation. I know that may frustrate a Verlander and a Scherzer who like to get the ball every 5 days, but it'll give them a little bit more longevity over the course of the season, given their age.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you got to go with Scherzer, Verlander, Quintana, Senga,
McGill, Carrasco.
No, Lucchesi, and I don't even know.
Lucchesi.
I don't even know because I don't want David Peterson anywhere near Citi Field. I don't want Tyler or McGill. I mean, McGill just has not looked good whatsoever. So you can't trust him in big situations, especially if we're trying to win. On top of that, the biggest issue with Tyler McGill for me is that he's not getting swing and misses. He only has 58 strikeouts and 71 and a third of an innings. Granted, he's going to go out there and he's going to pitch, but you can't win with a guy Tyler McGill in your starting rotation unless he has that high 90s fastball and he's locating those off speed and those breaking pitches. And again, I really think when I watch him, I really think that he's meant to be a guy like Trevor Williams.
Like more of like a reliever, or like a long reliever, or a spot starter, or
long reliever and a spot starter.
Okay, all right. I mean, I could see that. Again, a guy that throws that hard and has a nasty slider, I think should be in the back end of a bullpen. But listen, we tried that with Peterson, and I'm not comparing him to Peterson, but I don't want him to have like the same effects on him as it did as David Peterson. That's just me, but again, I think a 6-man wouldn't be too bad. I know Max and JV wouldn't probably like it, but you look back and you mentioned 2016 before to start this episode, and that's what we had to do. Unfortunately, with Jacob deGrom eventually getting hurt and Syndergaard being the ace, and guys like Lugo and Gazelman, they didn't want to ruin the momentum back then because they were both pitching well. So a 6-man rotation couldn't hurt. I mean, again, you all got to see. Like I said, these next 3 series is make or break for the New York Mets in 2023. So Ian, I don't know about you, but as bad as Max Scherzer was, his last start, the start against Houston was phenomenal, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Scherzer, he had put aside the things in the early season. He had the back, he had the neck, and then he got the suspension. He had 4 consecutive starts in May that were tremendous. And then he had 2 very poor starts, as you just mentioned. And then his last game in Houston, which provided us the only victory that we got down in the Lone Star State, he was absolutely phenomenal. People were saying that he's washed. He went 8 innings, allowed only 4 hits, 1 run, just walked 1, struck out 8. 2 starts prior. And again, the other thing as well is, I'm going to be honest with you when it comes to Scherzer, the start against the Yankees that you were the awful start where he went just 3 1/3, giving up 6. The start against Atlanta, I really don't look at it as it's a very interesting stat line. He went 5 2/3. He gave up 11 hits, gave up 5 runs, but struck out 10. Didn't walk a batter. He had 4 of the most crisp innings he's ever thrown as a Met, literally. And then he started getting hit in the fifth. And a lot of them were like cheap little hits, but then he started to implode. But he was getting swing and misses left and right. You mentioned his whiff percentage before, sitting at he's sitting within the 73rd percentile. Chase rate, he's within the 80th percentile. I think Max Scherzer, honestly, I mean, I don't know what he's been doing differently since the early going of the season. Obviously, he's just a smart pitcher and he knows how to adjust. But I think he's looked really good. And John Harper of the New York, what is he? The New York Daily News, the Post, whatever. Yeah, the Daily News. And John Harper, I know pretty well from a show that I hosted several years back. But he tweeted something out the other morning about how Max Scherzer's tenure thus far with the Mets has been a complete disappointment. I just completely disagree with that. I don't know about you, but I think he's turning on the Jets this season, and as a free agent signing, he has not been a bust.
No, I mean, listen, again, it's when you think West, I bet you it's two games that come to mind, and the first one is the one in Atlanta when the Mets just needed one game to win the NL East in 2022.
Granted, the whole team was playing like shit.
No, exactly. And again, it wasn't just him. It was Bassett as well that didn't really get us that win. And same with the playoffs. You look back at game one, but obviously there was something wrong physically. He wasn't at his peak form, throwing less. Not his average fastball velocity. But as for this season, again, he got suspended. It was a really bad look in my eyes because again, you need a guy like him, especially when JV started the year on the IL and we're playing Dodgers and all these other good teams to start the year and just the year in general. But again, I don't think he's been a complete bust. But again, when it comes to swings and misses, when it comes to guys chasing, when it comes to the Mets playing in general, they do play better when Max Scherzer has been on the mound. I mean, he's 6-2 for a reason. We eight out of the 12 games he's pitched have been decisions towards Max Scherzer, and he's 6-2. So the Mets do play well when he's on the mound. They hit for him, they provide. But again, when like I said before, when he misses right down the middle, and it gets ugly, and then it implodes. But that start against the Braves, he had that no hit stuff, and then there was just that one inning, and then next thing you know, a bloop and a blast, and that just ended his night. But I don't think he's been a bust as well, Ian.
Yeah, I think that other fan bases may say that it's a bust, and it's not that we're sitting here saying that like we're not. Obviously, I mean, if you listen to us every week, we want to win a World Series more than
100%.
more than I want
Yeah.
a job. But 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 from a Mets fan's perspective, last year was unbelievable. 101 victories. The Mets would not have done that if it was not for Max Scherzer.
No, 100%.
He was sidelined for a little bit. He made 23 starts, 2.29 ERA, struck out 173 batters and 145 and a third of an inning. And then you look at this season, he's 6-2, as you mentioned before. He does have a FIP of 422, so it's a bit higher. He has posted a 0.9 WAR. So Scherzer to me is turning a corner from those woes. He's getting that crisp on the slider. That spin is there both on the fastball and the curve again. And when I saw that Harper post, I just had to bring that up because to me, you can't say that he's been a bust whatsoever. And as you said, even this season, in those six, imagine if those 6 wins didn't occur, considering the starting rotation.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'd be what 34 minus it. We'd be 28 and 40 and 46.
We'd be even worse.
Yeah.
We'd be even worse. So
Yeah.
again, Scherzer is not.
Doesn't matter.
Scherzer has not been a bust. The jury is still out right now on Justin Verlander. At the end of the day, regardless of what transpires with Verlander over the course of the season, I will wind up blaming Billy Eppler for that because I just don't think it was the smartest move. But we're hoping for good things for JV, and I don't know about you, but I think he'll turn a corner.
No, definitely. And again, he's getting his form back. As long as he keeps giving us 6+ innings every start, excuse me. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, and we're starting to see that 96, 97 mile per hour velocity as well. And he's starting to store that a little bit better as well as the game's gone on. So, especially in his previous two, where he's gone deeper in the ball game. So hopefully it just kind of continues from there. I want you in my room. Rob, it is time for the weekly edition of What the Buck? Uh,
What the buck?
What the Buck? This week's edition occurred in the ninth inning on Sunday, which probably Mets the win in a tie ball game. David Robertson pitches in the eighth inning. Adam Ottavino gets the ninth in a must-win game. Okay, against the St. Louis Cardinals with one of the worst records in baseball. He goes to Robertson in the eighth and Ottavino in the ninth. Rob, what's your defense this time?
There is really no defense, Ian, because when the Mets are desperate for a win, are desperate for a series win, you got to go with your best. You got to play to win. You can't play for tomorrow. What the buck, Ian?
What the buck indeed. What the buck indeed. Listen, you and I, we've seen managers, since Winger. I think we both started our fanhood both began in the Bobby Valentine era. So we saw the Bobby Valentine, we saw the Art Howe, we saw the Willie Randolph, we saw the Jerry Manuel, we saw the Terry Collins, we saw the Mickey Callaway, we saw the Luis Rojas, and we saw the Buck Showalter. I want a manager to stay. I want a general manager to stay long term. Look at the Braves, Alex Anthopoulos and Brian Snitker. Look at some of the most prominent organizations. They have a stable management, whether it be in the front office or in the dugout. With that being said, I'm ready for Eppler to go, unless the Mets run it around, and I'm ready for Carlos Beltran to be in that dugout.
Pretty premature, don't you think, Ian? I mean, it's only been a year and a half, and
No,
all right, all right, all right.
no,
All right.
no, because you cannot listen. If they implode for the rest of this year and they don't make the playoffs, you fire Billy Eppler.
Okay.
You can keep Buck Showalter considering he has one more year left on his deal, but maybe that new general manager / president of baseball ops will want to bring in his own manager. And we know it's going to be David Stearns, right? So if it's David Stearns, is he going to want to keep Buck Showalter?
I mean, again, I think he would want to keep him for just that year contract, kind of like a show me what you got type year. But again, make head scratching moves like he's been doing this whole season, then it's looking slow for Mr. Showalter.
I'm just saying you can't have the highest payroll in baseball. And again, that's on Eppler, considering the team's not performing. But it seems like Buck Showalter's not getting anything out of his players. He's also showing just no emotion. And I know that that's not everything, but the Mets have been screwed on some calls. They have played sloppy. I mean, sloppy's not even the word. Keith Hernandez, I'm surprised he hasn't fallen over yet. The fundies have been brutal. But I'm telling you, from the bullpen mismanagement to the head scratching lineups, again, we don't know who's making them, but again, there's a lot of things that are going into it. I am of the nature right now. I am thinking that I might want to move on from Buck. I'm not kidding.
Well, considering you kind of just said you don't know who makes the lineups, and I kind of agree with you on that part. Buck Showalter, I feel like, has minimal say when it comes to making the lineups. Again, I saw a tweet this morning. I forgot from who, but again, shout out to him. You know who you are if you're listening. And again, he made a great point. It's time to kind of just throw everything out the door, what we've been doing analytically, and just let Buck Showalter manage the team and play baseball. Because I feel like, again, we're 5-13 in June. We're 5-13 in June. Our last road series win was in April. Hopefully we get one this weekend against the fighting Phillies. But again, the way that we're playing, we can't really again, we can't, no promises there, but just let the guy see if he can get our guys going again and make a push for October, even just the playoffs, like just that first round. I don't really care, but at the end of the day, we got to just play baseball and let the guys manage, the guys who know what they're doing, and that's why they're in the dugout, But
All right, so your leash is longer on Buck than mine.
I think my leash is up until next year. Next year, if we start slow next year, then yeah, then you start talking. But
What happens if he continues making these moves throughout the year and they just cost us games?
then you go into sell mode and then you reevaluate once you get to August, September. Unfortunately, that's just how baseball goes sometimes. And again,
And you're okay with this?
No, I'm
with
not okay
with
with
with all the
I'm
expectations,
not okay with it.
with
I'm
all the
not okay.
expectations, the highest fucking payroll in baseball. The Mets are playing like they've never played before.
Mhm.
Seriously, some of the acrobatics that are, I'm calling them acrobatics because balls are being thrown left and right to the outfield. They're being overthrown. Josh Walker the other day making that off balance Jeter throw. Alonso can't grab it, goes into the dugout. It's a shit show. And then you got, Daniel Vogelbach, but prior to his mental break, he literally could not swing the bat, and Buck Showalter continued to run him out. How many games did they cost him? Did that cost the Mets there?
I mean, the series in Atlanta.
Exactly. And then again, you come more recently and you have these bullpen decisions, and you have still some interesting lineups, even though I've been a little bit more content with them recently. But again, with not a lot of emotion, him continuing to kind of, I'm not going to say make all the excuses in the world when it comes to, but I don't want to hear, I'm proud of the guys and the way that we fought back. Dude, you shouldn't have given up 10 runs. Maybe you should have pulled your pitcher earlier. Maybe you should have done, again, I'm not a manager, but you got to show some sort of fire. You got to show some sort of, throw a team meeting, like a big time team meeting. Like, what does it have to take? And that's why, to me, for a team that has the patience that the Mets do, and after a 101 win season last year, to come out and perform like this, and not only perform poorly, but kind of, they're like, as I said before, sloppy's not even the word. Almost embarrassing's the word.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it is kind of embarrassing, and again, it's just sometimes you just see it on TV that they show no life, they show no energy, but again, Buck can only get tossed so many times, and God forbid he gets a heart attack on the field, but with a controversial play. But no, I'm just playing.
He's been tossed once.
I know, I get it, but again, that's not his type of, it's not his cup of tea, as a manager, but
Or it's not his cup of
Mets.
It's
Yeah,
not his cup of Mets.
no, but again, he says the right things to the media, and you don't want him throwing his players under the bus and stuff like that. So I think that just make matters worse. But again, I don't know. Yeah, I do agree. Maybe a team meeting would be nice, but we've had so many off days this month, and or just the season in general. We got all Monday off in July. Like, you don't know what's been said behind closed doors, and he can only say so much as a coach. You can't play for him either.
Monday Julys are gonna suck. Before we hop off and conclude this lovely episode 11, which has been full of positivity, we're going to look ahead here. The Mets tomorrow begin a 3-game set in Philadelphia, pending the weather, which it looks like it's crap all over the East Coast. It's going to be Kodai Senga at 6-4 with his 3.53 ERA, 87 Ks, going against our old buddy Taijuan Walker. On Saturday, it'll be Cookie Carrasco, yikes, against left-handed pitcher Christopher Sanchez. And then on the Sunday series finale, we have Max Scherzer going up against Zach Wheeler. Wheeler's got 98 strikeouts with a 3.48 ERA. And then they come home and they got a game set with the Milwaukee Brewers and a 3-game set with the San Francisco Giants. Rob, what are your keys to the series in Philly? Are we going to go? Are you and I going to go to Philly on Sunday?
Again, if the Mets take the first 2 of the series, we will go to Philly on Sunday, and pending weather, we will go to Philly on Sunday regardless, honestly. But pending weather, yes, definitely.
All right. What are your keys moving forward?
Again, just for Buck to just stop making questionable what the Buck moves, and obviously it starts in the dugout with the manager, but again, offense, keep hitting, keep jogging the guys out there that have been hot lately. Tommy Pham, he's earned his stripes. Lindor's kind of raised his average about 5-6 points, but he's still, the power numbers are there. Alonso's back. McNeil's got to get going. And obviously, with Senga through Carrasco, or just throw strikes and try to go more than 6 innings or at least five. Let the bullpen rest, get our guys in that have been effective, like Robertson, and or give Robertson the chance to win the rest of the game. As long as we have a chance, anything's possible.
I think Buck's afraid of having Robertson win the game. Yeah, no, to me, the keys to the series, especially the Philly series, Kodai Senga, limit the walks tomorrow. I think the Mets will be able to offensively take advantage of Taijuan Walker and in the ballpark in Philly. Cookie Carrasco, I think it's going to be more so of a bullpen game. Plus the bullpen, hopefully y'all can stick in there on Sunday. And then, on Saturday. And then on Sunday, even just moving forward into the Brewer series and going up even up until the All-Star break. If the Mets are going to be successful, obviously the offense has to be consistent, but we need Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander to be consistent Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. They've looked great at times. They've looked not so great at times. But considering the fact that Cookie Carrasco has not been good, Tyler McGill has not been good, Lucchesi has been up and down, Peterson has not been good, the depth has been tested. Kodai Senga's our only good starter currently, aside from Scherzer and Verlander when they're on. We need them to be more consistent and kind of lead the way for us here if we're going to, hope for any type of return. Rob, any final words before we hop off and conclude episode 11?
Well, again, just play with some heart, play with some passion. Mets fans, I know it sucks, but again, we're here, we're in this together, and at the end of the day, LFGM.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this from the outset, but Rob, you and I are together right now.
As in the same room and on the same Zoom meeting, yes.
Oh yeah, no, we're just friends.
Dude,
we're just friends. But I'm talking about we have not recorded an episode together in person in quite some time. Obviously, I am recovering from shoulder surgery, so I am back in the hood with Robbie, and we'll be recording in person for the foreseeable future. So again, for Robert Venegas, I am Ian Bosniak. We'll see you next week for episode 12. And again, guys, wake up. Everybody take your meds and let's go Mets.